Nobody's on.
Is there class?
I don't know.
What time do things start?
6.
Oh. Well, it's just 6.
Hi, Sharon.
Hi, it made me nervous. I got on
Oh,
at 6 o'clock and nobody was here. I thought.
I'm on. You just had a hard time connecting. Hey,
I'm
how's
always
everyone-
racing to get onto the computer and just finish up changing a diaper and making sure the kids are fed. So
Hey,
trying to get
71
there.
degrees. We should be outside by the beach.
Oh, absolutely.
71 degrees out.
We just brought Ben in from taking him for a walk.
Oh,
So beautiful. out.
nice day for it today, for sure. Well,
Oh, I wish we could be down at the lake.
Yeah. Well, tomorrow we got the service at 7:30 tomorrow, so got a breakfast. So who's there is coming. Those who not, come on Zoom, whatever. So we have a minion.
So 7:30, I can Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I can do that.
You can Zoom at 7:30.
Okay.
How long is it?
30 minutes max.
Okay, because I'll be heading to work, so you won't see me, but I might Zoom it.
No Torah reading. It'd probably be 20, 25 minutes maximum.
All right, well, I'll just get off when I have to, that's all.
Yep. Yeah, there's no Torah reading on a Wednesday, so.
How was Joan Baez?
Great.
Was it good?
Except it was Joni Mitchell.
You said Joan Baez.
Joni Mitchell tribute.
Huh.
Nope. Big L Taxi is the group that does Joni Mitchell stuff.
I was supposed to see her with Arlo Guthrie last year. And then COVID came along and canceled it.
Yeah. Well, hey, Marion, how you doing?
Hi, Rabbi. You say hi?
Everyone's ready for Passover?
I think so.
Hey, the good news is there's no chametz in my house year round. I don't have any chametz year round because I'm gluten free.
Neither do we. We don't have any bread.
I never have any bread anytime in this house, so
Nope.
makes it easier to clean.
But there is gluten-free bread. But you just don't.
Yeah, but doesn't have anything there's a lot on Passover.
Right.
Yeah, I was explaining to the kids that they're not going to have waffles or pancakes for a little while. And they were like,
Oh,
what are you talking about, Mom? They're in the freezer.
The Crown has delicious.
What's the bride?
Well, the Crown has
Bride looks like a pancake.
Dan, the
Oh,
Crown
yeah?
Yeah.
the Crown has about 100 pancake mixes, boxes I saw last week. So
Oh. That's
I'm
right.
saying,
Oatmeal will do them good for a little bit.
you want to make it easy, you have it at the
All you
Crown.
got to do is take matzah into a grater,
Yeah.
and just grate up the matzah, mix eggs with it. You can put a little bit of milk in it too. Mix it up, you can make it as thick as you want, and then you just put it on the griddle like it's a pancake.
Interesting. Maybe we'll try that with the because I know the kid.
You
We
can put
don't
it in,
do eggs.
well,
You could do the
I
flax
don't know
meal.
how kosher you're gonna keep, but you can also put it in the waffle griddle.
Oh yeah.
And the Crown has about 15 different cereals kosher for Passover too.
Oh,
nice.
the O's are really good. I can't.
Yeah, they have that.
They're
They have
really good.
Really?
You get about a quarter of a box. When I was a kid, you could get a
make
full
some money. I
car.
need money. That's what it takes.
To restore your credit card.
I haven't
To
made-
rate something about my credit
I haven't made a matzah pie the whole year outside Passover.
card? I'm not muted, so they can all hear us.
I'm excited to see what
starting.
Scott comes up with
Anyway,
for
those who are
matzah
talking
meal.
backwards, mute themselves, please. I'll mute her. Okay, yeah.
Meanwhile, I was extremely
You-
upset about what the UConn students did after the game.
That was awful, wasn't it? Awful.
What they do?
They
Awful.
destroyed part of the campus.
You don't know.
They threw down lamps. They threw them into windows of buildings. They had flamethrowers that they were throwing.
Sure.
It doesn't reflect nicely on UConn students, what they did today. I saw so many people talking about it today.
It's a lot of money.
Did they lose? Is that because?
No, they won the game, but they destroyed the campus in celebration.
Well,
Wow.
okay.
Not the players, the UConn students did.
Students, Dan, not the.
That would be helpful. Thank you.
When I was in college, I remember going to a party on the campus, on the UConn campus, and it was only in a parking lot, but at the far end of the parking lot, there was a house that was, it was student housing that they could rent.
Okay.
And there were two cars and they overturned the cars. And I was
They
like,
overturned a van.
this is dumb. I'm not going, why would I come back to a place where they're just gonna ruin stuff?
It is so awful to see that type of
Very
behavior.
common now on college.
All right.
I don't know why people have to go so crazy, really.
There's cheese.
I know.
Anyway, I wanted to talk today about Bruria. We're talking about a woman today. We have all women on besides me. So page 156, we're talking about famous Reb Meir's wife Bruria and the way she interpreted scripture. Amalahu Tzedoki Levuria. Certain Tzedoki, a Sadducee, some have the reading heretic that stuck him. What were they? So this was a heretical sect in the times of way back in the Mishnah, whose beginnings are traced to Tzadok, a student of Antigonos. He denied the divine origin of the oral tradition, refused to accept the interpretation of the written Torah handed down by the sages. So anyway, so these stukim, they were causing trouble for our people. So this one person, he happened to say to Bruria this. It's written regarding the city of Jerusalem that lies in ruins. Single barren one who has not given birth, from Isaiah. Can it be that she should sing because she has not yet given birth? Why barrenness is a cause for sadness, not for rejoicing. So had the verse just said single barren one, we would have explained it to mean that Jerusalem had formerly been barren, should sing because after many centuries she gave birth when the redemption arrived. Since the verse says barren one was not given birth, it's implying she still has not given birth even after the redemption. So why should she sing? So the case is here. Why should she sing if that's the case? So she said to him, "Fool, continue on the end of verse and read what it says there. Follow the whole thing. It says, for it's written at the end of the verse, for the children of Jerusalem, of the desolate one, which is what? Jerusalem, are more numerous than the children of the inhabited one, said God." So clearly Jerusalem is in fact not barren, she had given birth. What then does, O barren one who has not given birth mean? It means let the congregation of Israel sing, for she is like a barren woman in that she has not given birth to children who are destined for Gehenna, like you heretics. Isn't that a crazy thing to say? Do you believe in that, guys, about the Gehenna? That's for heretics, right? If you don't believe in the word of God, Sharon, do you think you're going to hell? I know someone told me that the other day they think I'm going to hell because I don't accept Jesus Christ as my savior. What about the reverse? Sharon, you're muted though. I can't hear you.
Because Ben was yakking.
Oh, okay.
But that's their belief. I mean, we all believe something.
Yeah.
And some people just believe either they were taught that, or they were brainwashed, or they were their education taught them that people that don't believe in him will go to hell. It doesn't necessarily mean it's true. So it's not something I believe. I mean, truthfully, I believe we're all going to either be cremated or however people choose what to do with their bodies after their bodies are no longer alive. But I truly believe in God, and I'm hoping that I am going to be one of the chosen that goes to heaven and has an afterlife.
I'll tell you right now, you are going to heaven because you study so often. God likes people who study a lot. It just so happens.
Well,
If you're born into a religion and you have no interest in studying it, God won't be that kind to you. We always said that, right? How do you grow close to God? Through prayer and study, right? And charity. If you don't do any of them, how are you getting close to God?
let's see, those are things that we were brought up to believe.
Not everyone was, though.
Right, exactly. So there are people out there that will say to you, well, if that is true, why does God take some really good people so early in life? Why doesn't God let those really good people do good on earth?
Well,
Why
that's a
does he
whole
take them
that's a
so
whole
early?
that's a whole 3-week discussion. So I
Yeah,
can't answer on one foot, but there are reasons that God does what he does, but we can't not necessarily understand everything that God does. We could try our best.
sometimes I think God needs those people more
Well,
than he thinks we need them.
someone said that someone passed away because God needed them. So I don't know. There's another person that believed that. What you said, Sharon. They said God needed another good person that died young. Anyway, I think we can have a whole course in that separately. Why do bad things happen to good people? And I think bottom line is I believe in reincarnation. I grew up on it. I was always interested in it. I think like my rabbi said Sunday night, Rabbi Ariel, he said, you can't understand life because life is like it's like a game of hide and seek with kids. God is saying, can you find me? Can you find me? And Sharon, 99% of Jews say, I can't. Well, it's too bad. we find God and we study about it here in class.
Right.
So I think that not everyone can understand life. And if you don't believe in Shar Gigulim, in reincarnation, I don't think you can really understand life, because without knowing about the Tikkun HaNefesh, about why the soul has to keep going through things. Do you believe that, Dan? If you don't understand the gates of reincarnation written by the Ari, who by the way died very young, 37, maybe he got too close to God, Sharon. The problem is the Ari died at 37. He was maybe too close to God. I think God said, "Hey man, Dan, you believe this? Keep your distance. Don't get in my wheelhouse, Dan. Do you believe it? You know what? The Ari knew everything about reincarnation, but God still said, hey, maybe you know too much."
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I wasn't raised to believe in reincarnation.
Right.
I was
Christians
raised
aren't.
to believe the threat. If you don't believe in Jesus Christ, then you're going to hell, right? So you have to do this, otherwise you're damned forever, right? And then as I grew up, the more that you hear about things and what you experience and the ways that you learn certain lessons kind of supports that, where the soul has to learn things, and maybe over the course of a number of lives. And that's something it's interesting to think that I've been brought up that way. However, I don't feel that way anymore. I don't believe it. I am being.
I have a lot of respect that you're actually opening yourself up to learning that. I mean, Dan, this stuff is totally different than what you grew up with, and yet you're have an open mind about it. I mean, Arlene, we're just at the Aggadah, we're just discussing about why the bad things maybe happen to good
Hi,
people.
Arlene.
Hi, sorry I'm late.
Yeah, like Dan. I mean, we can have a whole thing about this, but if you don't understand, you know what the thing is, Arlene, I was just saying, most Jews only see a small part of the puzzle. They don't understand. You know what? What are they doing last night? I was watching the UConn game with friends. People having 4 and 5 beers, and here I am with 4 or 5 waters, and the woman next to me says, "The bartender's going to cut you off from having too much seltzer."
Yeah.
Everyone's sitting there drunk out of their mind. But I'm just saying, I don't drink, but I'm just saying that we have a different outlook. I think the 5 of us here, because we study a lot about God. We know things that most Jews would never know. I don't care, Dan, you just started studying, Sharon's studying a lifetime, Marcy has, Arlene has. I mean, we have a leg up on most people because we actually take time for 2.5 hours every Tuesday to try to wrestle with these things while other people aren't. What do you think about that, Arlene? We're taking time to wrestle with God. Other people aren't, and they're just accepting what it is, and they're in a totally materialistic world, and they don't even think about the spiritual.
Right. I agree with you, Rabbi. You're talking about why bad things happen to good people.
Yeah, well, we started on that a little bit. Yeah,
You know,
Sharon said, yeah.
I don't think God makes those decisions. That's just, people are born.
Could be.
Clearly, I think, if God made the decision, I think everybody would be born the same, sort of, health wise, and but I don't think God makes those decisions. I don't think before you're born he says, you got lousy parents, so I'm going to make you a really good kid, or whatever. I don't think he says that. And I think we put too much credence to that, like it must be something I did, because we know that what you do in this world gets assessed in the next world, right?
Right.
So, I know it's strange, and and I know there are times when you have to say, why did this person pass away so young, or why is this person afflicted with so many illnesses? But I don't really think that's God's doing myself. I think that if it was God's doing, wouldn't everybody be born perfect?
Yeah, like what happened with Fran Hershkowitz? Was it meant to be that she would have complications from a knee replacement and die in the hospital like that? It seemed cruel. A lot of people are devastated for life because of that. The way she didn't give anyone an opportunity to really say goodbye because she died so quickly after the surgery.
Yeah.
Only a few of us, the family and I, had a chance to even see her at the hospital.
So that's and my views, since I've been studying, my views have changed so much. And I think have become wider. I think we put a lot on God that we don't need to put on God. And who knows? I could be really wrong, but.
No, I agree with you, Arlene. I think God delegates. I think God delegates, as you do in most companies. You know what? It's the heavenly company, but I think God delegates. He has angels, right? He has a whole whole myriad of angels helping God out. I'm not saying male or female, and God also has instead of we'll call it Satan, we'll call it the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, right?
Yep.
God gives us a good inclination and God's evil inclination. Believe me, there's many times I'm sure many of us try to give in to the evil inclination, and instead of helping out, I see people today that are homeless. They don't give them a penny. They always walk by. I see this place I go to late at night sometimes, and there's very rarely one person that ever helps out these people. And there are people that just walk by and have a blind eye to it. And they say, oh, how do I know this person is really poor? Well, it's right outside of a restaurant. Why don't you buy them some food like I do? Then as Arlene, I believe in her, what she says, that people might use it on drugs and alcohol, which they very might be. So I said, only way I'm helping you is go inside and I'll buy you something. A lot of times they want French fries, but what?
And that's one of the changes I made. I mean, I saw, I saw you do that. And I said, when we talked about it then, you remember when we went to the theater, Marcy, you and I went to see a Jewish play?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Remember? And you gave some guy, I don't, either you gave him a couple of bucks or you bought him something, I don't remember. And we talked about it, and you changed my mind about it, because I can only do my part, but if the person is really needy, so that's just one area. But I think, I don't think the angels are all the same either. Do
No,
you?
there's different ones for different tasks.
But I mean, I'm thinking there's some angels that are more diligent than others. You think they're all the same? I don't know.
No, there's different classes of them. Yeah.
Right. So,
Everyone has their unique task. Each one
Yeah.
has a task. Well, that's a whole other discussion, but
In-
yeah,
in my-
angelology.
in my family, we've always said, God gives you what you can handle. And I hope that's right. I
Yeah,
hope
well,
he gives me some good stuff too, which he has. He's given me a good life.
but I was listening to a rabbi talk about reincarnation the other week, and he's the head of this big center for study of Kabbalah, and he was saying that you can't really understand life without understanding reincarnation, because he says this life that we have, you have some good days and you have some bad days. He said, God isn't, Arlen, you might like this statement, God isn't necessarily creating a line of happy days every time. God is going to create a line, and some of them can be good, and some are going to be challenging. And God judges us sometimes as a teacher. You got to test, right?
Yep.
How did I get by college? Did I just get by just saying, "Oh, teacher, Mr. Ceruzzi, can you give me an A?" No, I had to prove it. I had to take a test, right? If you didn't pass the test, you didn't get the credit for the course. So I'm just trying to give an example. So I think God, gives us a test, and we have to see. God checks for some reason. I know it may not make sense, but God wants to test us and see God's creatures how we're going to do in a certain situation. Do you believe that, Sharon, that we are being tested every day? Is every day a test for you, or just maybe once a week or once a month?
What I believe is, I believe that God is there to provide options for human beings. And God knows that human beings have the brain that is capable of making decisions and deciding what kind of a life they're going to live and going after that life. Now, sometimes it doesn't happen for whatever reason, financially or educationally, or, you have to work on the farm and you can't go to school. I mean, there's always going to be obstacles, but I just believe that God is there to give us options, and for us to use those options either to the best of our ability, to the worst of our ability. It's really up to us. God gives us the option, and it's up to us as to whether or not what direction we're going to take with that option. That's really, really, really been my belief.
And I got to tell you, when we have Scott's on now, so we have 7 people here on now. I'm saying, because of the classes that we have and the discussions that we have, I try to go check my teachings again, listening to my teachers every week. I'll tell you, I look at the world a lot differently. As you said, since we've been studying together these years, I'm looking at the world a lot better, because I'm sort of trying to get a better insight so I could be a better teacher. So I'm looking at the world really a lot different, Sharon, than I did. Well, you know me from 29 years ago, but
Right.
I'm looking. Hi, Neil.
Right.
I'm looking at the world different from that. But every day I'm trying to look at the world and try to look it through God's eyes and see if I can find a way to try to do it.
And truthfully, as a girl growing up in the Orthodox Jewish religion, I really didn't learn about God as a child. I didn't learn through study. I'm actually learning more now in the past year or year and a half that I've been in this class. I have learned more about myself and about my belief in God than all the years of training that I had, because I have a teacher now who's willing to teach in English and teach understandably, where I didn't have that before. Growing up with my grandfather, Rabbi Geller, everything was in Hebrew. And I thankfully I could read Hebrew so that I could follow along, but I had no idea what they were talking about.
But you know what the thing is I've discovered this year, that you have to speak in a language that that you think God, when you're praying, and she'll say they don't know Hebrew. You think God doesn't know English. In the Haggadah, my rabbi says this, you speak in a language in the Haggadah so you understand it. He says if your language is Spanish, you do it in Spanish. Your language is English, you do English. If your language is Russian, you do it in Russian. If you're Ukrainian, not everyone has to read the Haggadah in Hebrew. You can do certain parts, right? You guys agree with that? But you have to understand what you're saying. You can't just go through it and no one understands what they're saying. You have to live it. We're reliving the experience. So we have to know what we're saying, right? What good is it of me reading the whole thing in Hebrew just to say, oh, we did it in Hebrew, no one understanding a word of it?
It's
What do you
not
think?
meaningful. It
You
isn't
know-
meaningful if you don't
Yeah.
understand it.
Going back to the daily challenges, if that's the right way to say it.
Yeah.
I wonder, I'm thinking now as we're talking. One of the things that we read on either on Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur, maybe on both, is that God didn't fully make this world. He left it unfinished for us
Right.
to finish. So are the daily challenges we face, are they somehow maybe connected with motivating us to help in that change?
I believe so.
Just
I
don't
believe
go sailing along every day and not thinking about much, but those challenges make us think.
Yeah. And I think myself that people that left us in the last few years, I still think that Sid, who was in our classes, Bernie, who was our classes, I think their soul has really benefited from us studying together. I can't prove it, but it's just a gut. You guys, I think I have a feeling that they have a much better grasp on the next life or even in heaven because they've studied and they have questions that they can ask that we never knew the answers to. What do you think? What do you think, Neil?
Yeah.
About Bernie? I have a feeling that that's the case. I can't prove it to anyone right now.
No, there's no way you could prove it in any way, shape, or form unless someone comes back from the hereafter, which we're not planning on.
Right.
Is it in the Torah, or did the sages just say repeatedly that studying is one of the paths to God, right?
Yeah, mostly it's in the rabbinic teachings. Yeah.
Okay.
I just like one thing before we turn over to the Talmud. I've been studying Rabbi Nachman a lot because I'm using some of his stuff for the Seder from Breslov Hasidus, and he said, "Ivdu et Hashem b'simcha, bo lefanav, and rejoice and celebrate." So you look at someone like Rabbi Nachman, who also died young, and you say to yourself, "Okay, he's writing about Ivdu et Hashem b'simcha." So he's taking a psalm. And he's saying, "Oh wow, this is my life." And look at he suffered with disease his whole life. He lost a child. He died young. He suffered. So the guy's how is he saying Ivdu et Hashem b'simcha? And it would be a disservice not to worship God with joy. And then you guys, Sharon points out, you look at the world and you see so many people suffering. So how can they accept that Ivdu et Hashem b'simcha? How can they accept that I'm supposed to live with joy when I'm suffering so much? So one of my friends who I used to study with in Brooklyn years ago said to me a few years ago, he said, "Well, I want to be tested by God. That way I have more of an appreciation. So bring on the test." I said, "Okay." I don't think a lot of people would agree with you, but he said, "I believe that the more tests I have, the stronger my faith will be." So Arlene, do you believe in that statement?
Oh yeah.
He wants
Yeah,
more tests.
I just every couple of weeks we Zoom with some friends of ours
Yeah.
who over the years, it's like anybody, right? Somebody I've known these people for 50 years. We're not the same. Neither one of us are the same people we were 50 years ago, right?
Yeah.
I happen to be a little more religious, a little more spiritual. These two friends they've just moved totally away from religion. And they were talking about it today. They had someone in their swim class asked them if they were celebrating Easter, and one of my friends said no, and then they said, well, are you Jewish? No, and then they got into this little thing about no religion and no, and it's hard for me to listen to this now
I'm sure.
because how do you think you got here, and where do you think you're going, and what, and I don't know. It's just hard for me to. They're just so staunchly anti-religious. Supposedly they believe in God, but it's hard from what they say for me to make that connection.
Well,
You know?
the hard thing is one last thing before we start, Talmud. The one thing I believe in is that if people knew what awaited them, and I hear many people come back and they tell me what happened if people only knew what's going on in the future, they would be. What do you agree with that, Dan? If people only saw what's going to happen in the future, they would have lived their life completely differently. You think that's a mistake?
Guaranteed.
I believe it.
Well, I think there are two big things that make people do that, right? They have some terrible life experience, like they're almost killed,
Yeah.
or something like that happens. And the other is for years, maybe more than 50 years, people who have theoretically died and then be revived,
Yeah.
all have a similar story about following the light and seeing certain people. And how can that be wrong?
How can 10,000 people tell the same story and be wrong? That's my point.
Yeah.
Do you
So
agree with that,
there's
Neil?
gotta be
I don't know if everyone agree with that, but yeah,
No,
I've met many people that have done that. So
I mean, we're talking eyewitness reports here.
yeah.
right. I mean, what better could you have, right? Maybe people thought the first couple of people were nuts. But when it happens and happens and happens, and how can you not believe that there's something after?
Yeah, that sort of implies it very seriously.
Right. Otherwise, I would think you would just die. I mean,
Only poof and you're gone.
Yeah.
I just think that everyone should know that everything's being recorded. It's like what Scott's got, Dan, at the recording of Zoom. God records everything, and if you think you're fooling God, I think, Neil, it's really sad. If you think you're gonna pull the wool over God's eyes, that God's not recording every action. Neil, you believe that? Everything we do is watched,
Everything.
and then you see it all, and then you say, "Oh my God, what have I done?" Because if people don't believe that, they're robbing banks now. They're having shootings. If they knew what would happen in the end, they wouldn't be doing this. Believe me, they wouldn't be doing this if they knew everything's being recorded. And you're gonna there's a price to be paid for every action.
Believe that. If they believe it. I mean, the problem is they don't believe it.
Not
or they
everyone
don't
has to
recognize
believe
it.
Right. Not everyone.
I think that people don't believe it until something happens to them.
Yeah.
Like when it happened to me, because I did have a near-death experience back in 2003. And when that happened, I really and truly just saw my life flash in front of my eyes. And I changed my life. It totally changed my life. It changed my
Stormy Daniel and $130,000 in payments.
It changed the way that I look at things. It changed the way that I feel about people, about how I feel about my family, how people treat me. I made so many changes following that experience. So did I die and come back? No, I didn't get to the point of actually dying, but I got to the point of knowing that I could die. And
yeah, that's great that you could.
I mean, I was sick enough that it could have happened had a couple of things not happened. So it really, I'll tell you, man, it really puts a perspective on life when that happens. And for the past 19 years, my life has been so much healthier. But it's just sad that that had to happen to me for me to make that change, and that I didn't just make it.
It's a big wake-up call for most people.
Yeah, yeah.
I think the main thing is we take these things and we do something with them.
Mhm.
I think some people probably say, "Oh well," and then they just go on, or maybe they get meaner. So I think sometimes when bad things happen, actually, I think most times, some good comes out of bad.
Yep.
Right.
No.
Yeah, that's a good statement. Yeah.
And to make big changes in your life, something has to happen to you to make that change. I mean, that's so maybe that's why bad things happen to good people. I don't know.
No rationale there one way or another. Yeah.
Right.
Well, this was very interesting. We'll continue again next week with this topic. I
wonder how all those kids that did all that damage are gonna feel 20 years from now.
about UConn's campus, the
Yeah.
destruction. You know what? It's funny. People talk more about that than they do about UConn's team now. It's such a distraction. All I hear today is about the destruction
I
of UConn's team.
know,
That's all I hear all day.
the poor guys, they worked so hard and they won. And all people think about is what happened on campus.
Yeah, because it's like the news. You focus on the negative, not the. Okay, we're on. Anyway, the reason we study Talmud and Mishnah, we've been doing this for a while, is because it helps the soul. Don't forget, Mishnah rearrange the letters is neshama, the soul. So we study in memory of Bernie tonight, and we're continuing the studying, and hopefully from the studying we do together, his soul will have an aliyah to the highest level of heaven. And I hope he's doing well up there, but I'm sure all these classes have helped him. I wish I could prove it to you guys. I wish I could prove it. I just feel it. I just feel it. But
If you could prove it, you got yourself the biggest scoop since the Johnstown flood.
the Johnstown flood. Yeah, the park connection.
I just thought I saw Marty try to get on a few minutes
Oh.
ago and then he's
Yeah,
gone.
he's coming back from his sister in Pennsylvania. He said he was going to
Oh.
try to get on here. I don't know where he is, if he's trying in the car or whatever. I'm not sure. Yeah, he did try to get on. Okay, well, we'll have to move on. I hope he'll join us. So
Yeah.
So are we on 7683?
7683 on number 27.
Okay, that's where I have marked. I just want to make sure everyone has it. So the Gemara attempts to resolve the issue. Tashma always means come and learn. Ta, come, and Shema, like Shema, the prayer. Let's learn. Approved from the Amoraic teaching. Hachali Gitti. Okay, so a Gitti again is a get, is a divorce document. Scott says Marty's having a connection issue on the road. Okay. Okay, so the Gitti is my get, but that person told the husband, your wife said to me, accept my get, or turn the page to me. I think, Neil, you're the leadoff guy again. So who?
I don't think we read 27 last week, did we?
Right now, we're
No.
starting on 27. That's what we're starting.
Oh, okay. You have to read note.
So the
okay.
Gemara attempts to resolve the issue is where we're starting.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
Come and learn. Hachali Gitti, woman approached and said to him, bring my get to me. Okay, Neil, you're up on 27, the last note on page
That is,
73.
appear before my husband and he will appoint you to deliver a get to me. There are two ways in which an agent can participate in the giving of a get. He can be anointed by the husband to deliver a get on behalf. He then becomes an agent for delivery, in which case the divorce does not take effect until the woman actually receives the get. He can be appointed by the wife to receive a get on her behalf and thereby become an agent for acceptance. In this case, the get takes effect as soon as the agent receives it, for his acceptance is tantamount to her acceptance. When appointing an agent for acceptance, the standard language used by the woman is, accept my get from me. That figures. Although the husband and wife can both appoint agents, each can appoint only one to fulfill his or her respective role. A wife cannot, for example, appoint an agent to deliver a get, nor may a husband appoint an agent to receive one. In our case, then, when the woman tells an agent, bring my get, the woman is not actually appointing an agent for delivery. Indeed, she has no power whatsoever to do so. Rather, she is suggesting to someone that if he comes across her husband, he should ask him to send a get, and they should have the husband authorize him as the agent for delivery.
Oh, Neil, you want to take the next page too?
Yeah, I'll take the next page too. What the
It's a
heck?
short one. Ishtacha Amra Tikabeli Gitti. But that person told the husband, your wife said to me, my get for me, here's the short page. Okay, Vahu Omer Helach Kama Shamra. And the husband said to the person, he said, they gave him the get, this get is for you. She said, Amarav Nachman, Bar Abu Amarav. Nachman said name Abahu, Arabahu said name of Rav this. Afilu Higia get liada ena muguresha. Even after the get reaches her hand, she's not divorced. So the Gemara is articulating it, the proof. Shmamina, let's learn. Adibra dibra ka kami. This ruling, let's learn that the husband relies on the agent's word.
28. That is, the husband intended to tell the agent that he trusts his report of his wife's instructions and presumes that the agent is indeed her agent of acceptance. He therefore does not bother appointing him as his agent for delivery. In fact, however, the woman did not appoint the messenger as her agent of acceptance, and therefore the person is ultimately not an agent of either party. Rav Nachman therefore ruled that the woman is not divorced, for the get has not been properly transferred from the husband to the wife. We see from here then that Rav Nachman accepts the first approach mentioned earlier. When workers respond to the hiring worker, we accept the terms as stated by the employer. They are relying upon the agent's report of the statement of the employer's statement, and they mean to accept the terms the agent has stated.
One more note left.
28.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dai salkadaka dibura dira ka samich. For if it would enter your mind that he relied on the wife's actual words when the husband has in effect appointed the get agent to deliver the get. Last note for you.
If he means to say, I do not trust your report of my wife's instructions, and they thereby remit the get to you subject to whatever she actually told you, then he has in effect appointed the messenger his agent for delivery. For this is what the wife asked him to do. Since he indeed has the power to appoint an agent for delivery, the get would in fact take effect once the agent delivers it.
Okay, so there's gonna be a handoff after this now. Once the get reaches his wife's hand, at least at that point she should be divorced. And so we may conclude that the workers rely on the hiring worker's word. The Gemara is rejected it. Rav Ashi is saying this. 76A5. Marty's still not on. Okay, what are you doing? Hi, Aki Ashta. Now, is this a good comparison? Is it? Let's see. Bishlama I Itmar Ifka. It would have been understandable if the opposite had been said. One, Sharon, you want to take over the notes?
Sure. Had the case been different, we could have indeed inferred whether the husband relies on the agent's report or on his wife's actual instructions. The Gemara proceeds to explain this further according to Rashi.
Okay, that's it.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go to the next. That is, if Nachman had discussed a case in which the wife told someone, "Hit kabeli gitti, accept the get for me, get." Ishra amrahachili gitti. Agent told the husband, "Your wife said, bring my get to me." Homer hela kamoshamran. The husband told the agent, "This get is for you," as she said. Amar of Nachman, Amar Rabba Baruhu, Amar Rab. Nachman said, the name of Rabba Baruhu, name of Rab, Mishagea get liyadu megoreshet. Once the get reaches the agent's hand, she is divorced. Alma the dubra dida kasamich. This would indeed have implied that the husband relied on the wife's actual word number 2.
He does not believe the agent's claim. Rather, he wants the agent to fulfill the wife's actual request. In this case, that he, the agent, function as an agent of acceptance. See Rashi.
Okay, that was 2. Inami mishagia get liyada mugareshet. Alternatively, ihaki nami, had Rav Nachman said regarding that case, once the get reaches her hand, she's divorced. Amad abdubura dide kasami. It would have followed that the husband relies on the agent's word. Number 3.
If Rav Nachman had said that the get takes effect when it is delivered to the wife, this would have proved that the husband based his instruction on what the agent told him. That is, I was told to bring the get as your agent for delivery. The agent would have accepted the get on those new terms and would therefore have become the husband's agent for delivery. See Rashi.
But hatam, ela hatam there in the case that Rav Nachman actually discusses, number 4.
That is where the woman asked the messenger to serve as her husband's agent for delivery, and the messenger falsely reported that she had appointed him as her agent of acceptance. See 76a.
So that was 4, right? Number 4.
Right. Yep.
The reason the get's invalid has nothing to do with the husband's intention. No, mishum daker shaliach l'shluchte legamre. Agent completely nullified his own agency. Damarle shaliach leKabbalah havina. For he in effect said to the husband, "I'll agree to be an agent for acceptance. Olacha lahavina. I will not agree to be an agent for delivery." Hence, Rav Nachman's ruling has no bearing upon our question. 5.
That doesn't make sense.
Here's the whole code of that.
Earlier in 76a, the Gemara had wished to prove from Rav Nachman's ruling that a husband bases his instruction upon the agent's claim. Rav Ashi now dismisses this conclusion, asserting that the get is not valid, as Rav Nachman ruled, for a different reason. Because the agent, by representing himself as an agent for acceptance rather than an agent for delivery, clearly indicated that he did not want to bother delivering the get. Since he states that he refuses to be an agent for delivery, and the woman never appointed him as an agent for acceptance, the get is surely invalid, even if he ultimately relents and delivers it. Hence, Rav Nachman's ruling that the get is invalid does not prove anything about whether the husband bases his instruction on the agent's claim or the wife's actual words. See Rashi. In contrast, if the woman had appointed him as her agent of acceptance, and he falsely reported to the husband that she suggested he be an agent for delivery, we would not presume that he is refusing the woman's appointment and does not consent to be an agent of acceptance. This is because it's more difficult for him to deliver the get than to just accept it. And therefore, if the agent is willing to deliver it, it certainly follows that he is willing to accept it. Summary. Rav Nachman's ruling. If a woman told an agent to bring the get to her, but the agent told the husband, "I'm an agent for acceptance," and the husband responded, "This get is for you," as she said, the get is invalid. Initial interpretation of ruling. The get is void because the husband based his instruction on the messenger's word and therefore never appointed him as an agent for delivery. Thus, the messenger has no authority to deliver the get, nor does he have authority to accept the get, since the woman did not in fact appoint him as an agent for acceptance. Rav Ashi's interpretation. By falsely claiming to be the wife's agent for acceptance, the messenger indicates that he refuses to deliver the get. For this reason, he remains unauthorized to do so, even if the husband meant to appoint him. Just isn't making sense.
It's all very convoluted, I'm afraid.
It really really is. I mean, if the agent is an agent of acceptance and he accepts the get, so now it's in his possession, what
And he
good
got
does
it from
do?
the husband.
Right, but what good does it do if it's in his possession if he can't deliver it so that the wife or the husband never gets the get? This just doesn't make sense. How can you
Yeah,
be
I
an
mean,
agent of acceptance and not an agent of delivery?
Well, that's possible. I mean, that's just simply a rabbinic ruling that you can't be both. It's sort of like you can't be a agent as a realtor, you can't be an agent for the buyer and the seller. I mean, that makes at least some sense. But this has all got very convoluted as to who's doing what to whom and when.
Yeah. Yeah.
We study way back that you could throw it into a yard, somebody's yard or something? Now we know why they did it.
Right. That's right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's true. We did study it.
So the agent of acceptance can throw it into somebody's yard? And then that
No,
person in the
the
yard
agent for
pick it up?
delivery, the agent for
Agent for
delivery could throw it into the agent for acceptance's yard or something like that.
Right.
Their, what's the word, Rabbi? Into their,
The domains?
yeah, into their domain, I think.
Oh
Right.
my
Well,
God. Yeah,
Private in the public domains. yeah.
yes.
Wow.
Remember that whole spot? Remember that whole thing about the discussions?
Right.
Reshut HaRabim and Reshut HaYachid, the public domain and the private domain.
Yeah.
That's another masecta. Okay, any more comments on note 5 here?
I about covers it.
The Mishnah says here, if one hired craftsman and they deceived another, they have nothing but grounds for complaint about one another. The Gemara above, said, it dismissed the possibility the ruling concerns an employer who deceived his workers or workers who deceived their employer. 6.
Earlier, the Gemara stated that if the Tana was really dealing with a breach of trust between employer and worker, that is a case where one reneged on his commitment to employ or to work for the other. It should have used the language they reneged rather than they deceived. See above 76A note 4.
That makes some sense.
Yes.
Some sense.
Two very different meanings, right?
Yeah,
Deceiving is
without
very different
deceiving.
from reneging.
right.
Hey, Marty.
Marty, welcome.
Oh, you
everybody.
found a way to get on. Okay, I guess you're home now, right? So.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're on
we-
76B2, B1.
You
Thank
won.
you.
On the right side, first column on the right side.
Okay.
We did note 5 on the bottom.
No, we just did 6.
Oh, 6.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone on the right spot. Now, however, the Gemara reconsiders this. Ibait Ema. So if you say this, really the Mishnah is dealing with a breach of trust to employer and worker. Hi, Tana, Chazu Nami, Hitu, Kade, Le. And this Tana for our Mishnah characterized their reneg as they deceive. Number 7.
That is, even though the retraction of the employer or the workers from their commitments toward the other party is more aptly described by the expression they reneged, the Tana nevertheless chose the less precise wording of they deceived. See Rashba. According to this answer, then, our Mishnah means that when the workers refuse to work or the employer refuses to let them work, the aggrieved party has no monetary claim against the other, just valid grounds for complaint. A Baraisa cited later makes clear that this ruling applies only in a very specific set of circumstances, which that Baraisa proceeds to define.
Everyone happy?
Yeah, so far.
Okay, that was 7. Okay. The Gemara proves that the general term deception is sometimes to convey retraction specifically. In doing this, it quotes a lengthy brisa. Tanya says in the brisa, "Hasho chereta umanin." Uman is a craftsman. One who hires craftsmen, hitu et balabayit, and they deceive their employer that they reneged on the commitment to work. Oh, what happens? Balabayit hitautan. The employer deceived them. And what happens is he reneged his commitment to give them work. Ein lahem alzeh taromet. They have nothing but complaints against one another. They have no monetary claim. 8.
The aggrieved party does not have a monetary claim because the offending party did not actually cause him a loss. For example, if the workers were the ones who retracted and they can tell the employer, "You have not suffered a loss, go hire other workers to replace us." Likewise, if the employer is the one who retracted, he can tell the workers, "You have not suffered a loss, go hire yourselves out to another employer." Nonetheless, since it is inconvenient to find new workers or a new employer, the aggrieved party does have a justifiable complaint against the offender for his conduct, according to Rashi, see Tosafos.
What use is a complaint? I mean, you can register that, you can give them a nasty note for the Better Business Bureau, but I'm not sure what having a complaint is going to do for anyone.
Hopefully they'll explain that, because this doesn't make any sense. It's
Yeah, okay.
Clearly, if I hired you for something, you stop looking for work, waiting to start work for me,
Yes,
you have lost.
Yeah.
And if you walk away from a job that's in the middle, it might take me a while to find the proper people to come and do that work. So I've lost.
Right.
I don't know how the sages can possibly say that no one is at loss here.
I that's my problem. Exactly.
So let's see if they explain the complaint.
Oh. Trustfully. That was 9.
It is interesting to note, though, how
I see.
they're talking about reneged or deceived, right? And they're arguing over which word to use, what it really means, right?
Right.
When in reality, if you renege from a commitment, haven't you in fact deceived somebody? So
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I
they
think
be
that
synonyms?
deceived is a good word.
You've broken the contract.
You've broken the contract. Well,
Yeah.
there is a contract,
Well, if it's verbal, even if it's verbal,
sure.
right?
Yeah, I agree with you.
But in the beginning, they were using renege and deceive interchangeably, and they're really not interchangeable.
That's
How would
true.
you distinguish between the two?
Yeah,
I'm not a
I would
disagreement
go
with you, Sharon, but how would you distinguish?
between
I would-
reneging and deceiving. Because when you renege something, you're not following through with your commitment. It doesn't necessarily mean that you are deceiving someone. Deceiving someone is telling them something and then going and doing the opposite. But reneging a commitment is just not following through on a commitment, but it's not really deceiving.
We're back to the concept of intention.
Kind of.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah. Maybe it'll say something in 9. Rabbi, you only have 3 words, so do you want me to just finish off with note number 9?
You can.
Okay. The general rule just stated that the aggrieved party has no monetary claim against the offender. Applies whether the employee was a day worker, sahir, or a contractor hired for the job, kabbalah. As we shall now see, however, there are circumstances under which this rule does not apply, and these exceptional circumstances differ for a day worker and for a contractor. The Baraisa will now delineate these exceptions, beginning first with those that apply for a day worker and then proceeding to those that apply for a contractor. See Rashi.
Here I go.
You know, this has a smell. It smells almost booksy and inky, like over time.
That doesn't make sense.
Rabbi, that was number 9.
Number nine, okay. But mitzvah remembering, when is this said? Amurim to say, when is it? When is it? Example, when your situation is it that you state that the day workers have no monetary claim against their employer. Shall lo halku, with the employer reneged at daybreak when the workers had not yet traveled. 6 B2 to the work site. Who's taking over at number 10? Got a long note here.
I can read it if you want.
Okay.
Let me start at 10. In such case, the day workers have no monetary claim, for there is still ample time for them to hire themselves out for the day to a different employer, according to Tosafos. Rosh, Tosafos, and others write that in fact, it is immaterial whether the workers actually travel to the worksite. The sole factor that determines the employer's liability is simply whether the workers can still hire themselves out to someone else for that day. If, for example, they had not yet traveled to the worksite, but the employer reneged late enough in the day that they could no longer find other work, the employer must indeed compensate them, assuming, of course, that the workers could have found other work earlier on that day. The Baraisa mentions travel to the worksite only because usually it will be too late for workers to find other work after they have made this trip. Rambam, however, disputes this interpretation. He argues that the Tana specifically mentioned travel to the worksite because this act represents a kinyan, a binding act which finalizes the terms of the employment agreement. According to Rambam, then, once the workers travel to the worksite, the employer is liable for their wages, even if they could not have found other work earlier, for the employer's commitment towards them has already been finalized. See Rambam, who discusses our Baraisa at length and asserts that Rashi concurs with his view. I think we studied that not too far back.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Okay, that was note 10. Abal halku chamarim below matzu to but for example, employer hired chamor as a donkey driver to transport the grain. They went to the pickup location and found no grain to deliver. Paulinu matzu sadeh shehi late lecha. The hired workers to hoe a field, and they went and they found the field damp and unsuitable for hoeing. So the employer must pay them their full wages for the day. Nevertheless, their wage must be adjusted for consideration of the fact that they did not actually labor. One who comes to destination loaded with grain is not compatible with the ones who came with empty. Osam lacha liyoshev batal, and we're the ones who performs labor is not comparable to one who sits and acts. Therefore, these workers do not receive the same wages as they would have if they actually performed the assigned job. Number 12.
Number
11.
11.
11.
My eyes.
Rashi explains how the workers' wages are actually calculated. The donkey driver had been hired to transport goods from point A to point B, but since the employer did not have the goods ready for him, he can now make his trip without cargo. Obviously, It is easier for the driver to travel without cargo than it would have been for him to take the employer's full load. We therefore estimate how much the average donkey driver would be willing to discount his wage to receive this benefit, and the employer gives him the discounted wage. The Brisa has just discussed a case where an employer reneges on his commitment to workers at a time when he jeopardizes the worker's ability to find other work. Later, the Brisa will discuss the converse case, workers who renege on their commitment to work at a time when they jeopardize the employer's project.
Yeah, that was 11. The above clause dealt with workers hired by day. Bryson now clarifies the law for workers. What about hired by the job? Well,
12, see above note 9, see Maharasha, see Hagos Ashri Turosh 6.
the above clause dealt with workers hired by day. Bryson now clarifies the law workers hired by the job. 12. By Medvar Marim, when is it said, considering what situation was it stated that the aggrieved party had no monetary claim, where the offending party reneged and the workers had not yet begun to work. 13.
The Brisa's ruling that the aggrieved party has no monetary claim against the party that reneged applies to contractors who agree to complete a job but did not yet begin work on it. If they already began work, however, a different law applies, as the Brisa proceeds to explain, according to Rashi.
That was 13. So, aval, but hitchilu, they started. They've started, begun to work on the job they were assigned. A different law applies. We evaluate for them the worth of the labor they already performed, and the employer must pay them the sum. Keitzad, how was the evaluation carried out? Kiblu kamal Sample. Suppose, for example, workers accepted upon themselves to reap a certain area of standing grain in return for 2 slime dinars. They reap half of it, but then reneged the left half of it unreaped. Beged le'roz v'shnei slayim. Is that where I'm up to? Beged?
Yeah.
Or suppose that they agree to weave a garment and return to 2 slime. Agu chetzio v'nichu chetzio. They wove half of it, but the left half of it unwoven. So what happens now? Samin lahen et ma shasu. They evaluate for them the worth of the labor, what they did. They already performed, meaning since they performed half the job, they didn't have to pay. They contracted for regardless for the current price of labor. Dinarim. In other words, if the price of labor has risen and the current price is the labor they performed has the value of 6 dinars, so it'll cost 6 dinars to complete the job. So employer gives him 1 seller, which is 4 dinars, even though this means he must now pay more to complete the entire job. Number 14.
That is, the employer bears the higher cost of labor. He must pay the workers half of what they originally contracted for, 4 dinars, even though this means it will cost him more than he originally contracted for to complete the job. He must now pay 6 dinars to new workers to complete the second half of the work. So it will now cost him 10 rather than 8 dinars for the entire job. This Tana disagrees with the Tana of our Mishnah, who taught that the offending party must compensate the other for fluctuations in the price of labor. See Rashi.
That was 14.
Yeah.
Or Yigmaru Malachtan V'yitlu Shnei Slime. If the workers prefer, they may complete the work and collect 2 slime, their full wage. In Selah, if they perform, still has a value of that Selah, that coin. Notain Lahem Sell, the employer gives them 1 seller, 50.
The Gemara below in 77a will ask that this law seems obvious, and there was apparently no need for the Tana to mention it, according to Rashi.
Brisa presents a different opinion how they pay. Rav Dosa says this: Shaman lehen masha atid lasot. We evaluate for them the worth of the labor that still needs to be performed, and this amount is deducted from their wages. 16.
Rav Dosa concurs with the Tana of our Mishnah, who ruled that the workers' wages are withheld in the amount necessary to subsidize the employer's increased expenses. The Gemara proceeds to explain this with an example.
That was 16. Haya yafe shisha dinarim. Example: if at current price the labor needs to finish the job is valued at 6 dinars, they tell them shekel. The employer gives them only a shekel, which is 2 dinars, 17.
So that the work can be completed for a total of 2 Psalm 8 dinars, as the employer originally planned, according to Rashi.
Or yigmaru, what happens? Malakten v'yitlu shnei salim. The workers prefer they may complete their work and collect their full wage of 2 slime, 8 dinars. In Sela, and if current price, the value of the labor yet to be performed is only a Sela, they'll tell them a Sela, the employer gives them a Sela.
This ruling seems obvious. The Gemara below in 77a will question why it was taught, according to Rashi. Although the Baraisa speaks only of compensation where the contractors were the ones who reneged, the same principles can be applied in reverse when the employer is the one who reneges, that is, adjustments for the fluctuating costs of labor are figured in the way least advantageous to the employer. For a more detailed explanation of this, see note 76a and see also Ritva and Rosh.
The Bryce is limiting now. Application of the above dispute between the Tanakh of Dosa. But Medvarim Arim. So when is this said? In what situation, in other words? Who the workers who renege have more liability than just stated. Number 1976b3. Whose turn? Marcy, is it your turn? I think.
Okay. In the preceding case, the workers who refuse to complete their task do not pay any penalty out of pocket. According to the Tanakh, they receive full prorated wages regardless of the employee's final expenses. And even according to Rav Dosa, they need to subsidize the employer's expenses only up to the amount of the prorated wages due them. The Gemara now discusses a situation in which their liability exceeds this level. See Rashi and Rosh.
Okay, that was one.
That was 19.
Oh, excuse me, 19. My eyes are getting a little blurry here. The davar she'ein avud, in a situation where this thing will not be lost if it worked on it temporary halted, 20.
That is, the nature of the job is not time critical, so long as the employer eventually finds other workers to complete it. He will not suffer a loss. As such, the workers have only limited liability. According to Rav Dosa, their wages can be withheld to subsidize the increased cost of hiring new workers. They do not, however, bear greater liability than this. As becomes clear later, the Baraisa is speaking of a case in which there are no other workers presently available at a reasonable wage to complete the job. Nevertheless, since the job does not need to be finished immediately, the fact that the employer must wait to hire others is not legally viewed to constitute a loss on his part, according to Rashi.
Ketzad Matan, how would he so trick them? Merlahem Sela Katsati Lachem. They say to them earlier, I fixed your wage at 1 Sela, Bo Tlu Shtayim. Come back and finish the job and I'll allow you to collect 2 slime. 22.
Did we skip 21?
Yeah, we skipped
I'll do
something.
both. I'll do both.
21, okay.
Ritva and others explain that the employer has these means of recourse available to him, even if the original workers renege before actually starting work. And then the employer has no intention, nor has he any obligation, to honor his additional commitment. According to Roche, even if the employer remits the extra money to the workers, they are required to return it to him.
Ad kama shocher lalehen, socher. How much may the employer spend workers' money in hiring other workers to replace the first workers? Ad arba'im v'chamishim zuz, up to 40 or 50 zuz dinars.
Okay, let's see, that was 23. Yeah. That is 40 or 50 dinars per day per worker, even though the original workers were hired for only 3 or 4 dinars per day, according to Rambam. The Gemara later in 78a qualifies this ruling somewhat. Ramban explains that the 40 or 50 dinars figure represents the amount an employer in a desperate situation would likely pay workers to avert an imminent loss. Based on Ramban, Sma in 33326 rules that this amount is not meant to be definitive. Rather, the employer may hire other workers at a rate of compensation appropriate to the task and the potential loss he seeks to avert.
Yeah, Sma is a commentary. Okay, that was 23. The Brisa has now stated, if imminent loss threatens the employer as a result of the workers quitting, he may hire other workers, and the first ones must subsidize the wages. The Brisa now qualifies this somewhat. By Medvarim, when is it said the employer has this right? When does it happen? Zman, at a time, she'ein sham polim l'schor, when there are no other workers available in the areas that he could hire at standard wages. Aval yesh sham polim l'schor, but if there are workers available, 3 years to hire standard wages, v'amar, say uschor be'elu. And the original workers told the employer, go and hire some of them to finish your job. The employer may not hire others at exorbitant wages. 24.
See Rashi, see also Rosh, end of something too. From the phrasing of the Brisa, it appears that the original workers must inform the employer of the availability of workers who would do that job at reasonable rates. If they do not, and the employer is unaware that such workers are available, the employer apparently retains the right to hire others at significantly higher wages. Furthermore, if any dispute arises as to whether they indeed informed the employer, the burden of proof rests upon them, according to Ritva.
That was 24. Ein lo alehen ela taromet. What does that mean? Okay. In such a case, the employer has nothing but grounds for complaint against the original workers. Okay, so the Gemara is recording a dialogue between Amorim pertaining to one of the Barisa's rulings. It says, Tane Tani Kami Derav. A teacher of the Brisas taught an excerpt from the above Brisa in the presence of Rab. Notin lehem scharan mishalem. If the workers arrive at the work site and no work's available that day, the employer must pay them full wages, right? Amar lei. Rav responded, Chavivi Amar, my uncle, said this. He said, Ilu ana havai. If I had been the employer, lo havayativin lehen ela kafoel batel. I would have paid each worker no more than the wage due an inactive worker.
Okay, for example, Rev Hio would have adjusted their wages in consideration of the fact that they did not, in fact, perform the work they were hired for. For an explanation of how the wages due an inactive worker are calculated, see above note 11.
$25 that was. Okay. Bat amrat noten lahem scharan mishalem. And yet you are saying that the employer must give them their full wage. Gemara taught the Brisa itself accords with Rav Chia. Baha ala katani. In regard to this idea, the Brisa teaches, Eino dome hacha ta'un hacha reika. One who comes to destination loaded with grain, not comparable to one who comes empty. As one who performs labor is not comparable to one who sits there inactive. Therefore, these workers do not receive the same wages as they who actually perform the assigned job. Why then does Rav imply the Brisa is at variance with what Rav Chia said? Mar says, Lo simahu kame. Teacher didn't have a chance to finish saying the rest of the Brisa when he related it to before Rav. Therefore, Rav mistakenly thought Brisa meant the workers receive full wages. The Gemara.
Can I ask a question? I've missed something. So this is back a couple of pages. It says the person comes to work and he expects, the wagon driver comes to work and he expects to bring a full load to some destination. But if there's no load to take, he goes anyway? Or if it's not a full load? To me, it sounds like if there's no load, he goes anyway. And I don't understand that.
I think, Arlene, that he doesn't know that he doesn't have a full load until he gets to his destination and they don't have the grain to give him. So he's going there.
I thought it was the
expecting to come
reverse.
back.
I thought it was the reverse. I'm going to see if I can just find it. Thank you.
Clear it up.
Where did we start?
So that was 25. At amrat noten lehem scharan mishalem. And yet you are saying the employer must give them a full wage. Mara taught that the Brisa accords with Rav Chia. Baha alat katani. Regard to this idea, the Brisa teaches itself. Eino doma hacha ta'un lahaba rekan. One who comes to his destination with loaded with grain isn't comparable to one who comes empty. One who performs labor is not comparable. Batel is a batlin, like Yiddish, someone who's inactive. Therefore, these workers don't receive the same wages as those who actually perform the assigned job. Why then does Rav imply that the Brisa is at variance with Rav Chia? Our answer says, Lo zaimai hu kame. The teacher then didn't have a chance to finish saying the rest of Brisa when he related it before Rav. Therefore, what happened? Rav mistakenly thought that the Brisa meant the workers receive full wages. Gemara has another version. Ika damre semahu kame. Those who say that the teacher did in fact finish saying the Brisa, Bachi Kamar, and this is what the Rav said in the response. Chavivi Amar, my uncle said, I havayana. If I had been the employer, Lo ave yahivna la klal. I wouldn't have paid the workers any wages at all. 26.
Okay. Rav Hia argues that the workers are not entitled to any compensation, for it is their own misfortune, and hence their own loss, that the field was too damp to be cultivated. They should have realized that this might be the case before accepting the job, and therefore the employer is not liable for their wasted time, according to Rashi.
Could I?
Okay, no reader. Okay, when you're finished with the question, Arlene.
So on 76B too, it says, but if, for example, the employer hired donkey drivers to transport grain and they went, you're right, Sharon, they went to pick up location and found no grain to deliver, or if he hired workers to hoe a field and then found the field didn't need to be, the employer must pay them their full wages for the day. Nevertheless, their wages must be adjusted in consideration of the fact that they did not actually labor. For one who comes to his destination loaded with grain is not comparable to one who comes empty, which is right. But why does the, so is it the employer who bears that or the driver?
I think the driver.
Okay. And why? It's not the driver's fault.
Well, it's not necessary. Well, it depends. For example, if you're talking about the field being too wet, this comes under the heading of, well, it wasn't my fault, it wasn't your fault. So there's no fault here. On the other hand, if the employer was supposed to have this pile of grain ready and does not, then I would say that's the employer's fault, because he, unless again, there's some very valid reason he couldn't. I don't know, maybe there's some reason, but if he was supposed to, then in general, unless there's some real good reason, I would think he is liable.
Well, it says here, nevertheless, their wages must be adjusted in consideration of the fact that they did not actually labor.
Well, remember, there was also some bit about it's easier to go back home with an unloaded donkey than with a loaded donkey.
Right.
So
Right.
there's some compensation difference there.
True.
Well, I agree with you, Neil, but it's not the driver's fault.
Well,
He
yeah.
was in anticipation of doing a day's work.
No, I agree with you. I mean, the worker, the driver is in, unless there's some, what's the no fault cause there. The
Right,
driver is definitely entitled to some degree of compensation.
right.
Absolutely. I mean, I totally agree with that.
Thank you. I was just trying to get it straight in my mind.
I think the driver is entitled to full compensation because
Might as
at the
well.
beginning of the day, the driver had the expectation, he accepted the work, he accepted, the employer. And in goodwill, he drove his donkey all the way to have it filled with grain. And then the guy wasn't ready to fill it with grain. Well, that's not the driver's fault. The
No,
guy
the
knew the driver was coming. Why didn't he
Right.
have, like you said, unless there were extenuating circumstances?
Yeah, I'm not assuming that for the moment. I'm assuming that the employer just simply screwed up. In which case the driver is entitled to compensation, and I agree, I think it would be a full compensation, except back there we mentioned that there's some ease on the donkey and the driver if they don't have to schlep this grain. So therefore there's some, not the full compensation, but some portion thereof.
But
At
he-
least that's what the rabbis say.
So I'm not arguing with you, Neil.
Yeah, no,
I see what
these
you're
are all
saying,
discussions.
but this driver who ended up going somewhere and got nothing and came back could have gotten this probably work somewhere else and
Yeah.
been paid a full day. So it just doesn't seem right to me.
Oh, I agree with you.
I think
I
it's
mean,
on the
I think,
employer to discuss it with whoever was supposed to give them the grain.
yeah, I mean, I think that the person who, the discussion that says, as I said, when the driver has it easier going back home, so therefore he doesn't go full compensation. I don't agree with that at all.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what the rabbis are saying, but I don't buy it either.
Right.
And are we all assuming that there was no possible way to send a message to the driver ahead of time saying that the grain will not be ready? Do we,
Probably.
there was no way of communicating with the driver?
Yeah. Carrier pigeon. No, I doubt if, I mean, it depends on how, what kind of distance. If it was just, down a couple of blocks, absolutely. If it was, the next village.
Yeah.
I can't imagine how they would have gotten word over.
This doesn't sound like a couple of blocks.
No, it doesn't.
And there was no way I would think to, well, you'd have to send somebody. So you might as well send the driver in case it's ready. I mean, otherwise you're going to pay double.
Yeah, okay.
Today, we would just text and say, hey, the grain's not ready, don't come.
Right. Yeah. Well, they
Yeah,
didn't have a way of texting that way, unless they knew they had some knowledge from the future. But
there
some of
was
them,
there was a story I remember years and years ago that someplace in the middle of nowhere, Wyoming or something, they didn't have telephones in town because the town was 55 miles away from the nearest exchange. So everything had to be done by mail. And I can see that being the same problem where some truck driver shows up to drag the cattle or whatever they were pushing in those days. And it's just not there. It's just not ready. And there was no way of telling him that it was, not there. The story finally concluded, they finally ran one telephone line 55 miles, and they actually ended up with this giant giant exchange or party line that finally everyone was really happy.
Well,
That's an interesting story.
Yeah, I was fascinated by that. Where are we?
that was a discussion on 26.
Okay. The
Okay.
heck is 26? Oh, there it is. Okay.
Okay. Vat amrat kafol batel. And yet you're saying that each is paid as an inactive worker? Gemara is questioning. Ela kashahach. This probably supposes difficulty. It contradicts that which Rav Chia said. Question mark. My answer is lo kasha. No difficulty. This Rav Chia's statement, the employer owes no wages, concerns a case where the employer and the workers inspected his land on the previous evening. Since the workers saw the field, they should have realized that it might new paid 76B4 might be unsuitable for cultivation. The employer isn't liable for the lost time. It's 27. Who's reading? Who's up to now? Marty, are you available?
Sure.
Okay.
27. When the workers saw the land, they should have been able to judge its potential for cultivation. They should have realized that then that it was damp, or that an evening rain could potentially make this kind of field unsuitable for cultivation by morning. The employer, then, is not liable if they arrive in the morning and the field cannot be cultivated. As far as he's concerned, the workers accepted his offer of employment with the understanding that there might be work the next morning. Yeah, but how do they know?
Right.
Yeah, but that makes some sense. I mean, you're looking at a field, which is, a field. So if it rains that night, and everyone, assumedly, both parties know it rained that night, it's not going to happen.
Well, and
There's
if
some logic to this.
Let's take the case of snow days.
Oh, good.
All right.
So we know it's going to snow tomorrow. So we all stay up real late trying to figure out if we're going to have our kids home tomorrow, or if they're going to have or if they're going to go to school. And it isn't until we get up at 4 a.m. and see Gil Simmons on Channel 8 to find out if there's been a closure. And then, then we have to go check Facebook, or we have to check everything else to see if there's a closure. It's snowing. Don't we know that if it snows, the buses don't run?
But the problem with that is it depends on how much snow. If there's only an inch or so, who cares?
It depends on how much rain makes the field uncultivatable.
Okay. Yep, I agree. That is where it starts to get confusing. Absolutely.
But you would think in those days with no, radio, TV stuff, that the employer should be able to look at that field and make a decision whether to have the people come that day or maybe the next day, so that he doesn't have to pay them wages for no work.
So it rains all night, and he realizes that his field is uncultivatable.
Yeah.
But that's not what the Mishnah is, or that's not what the Gemara is saying here. The Gemara is saying it's their responsibility to notice that it's raining too hard.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, what is too hard? We're back to that question again.
So let's take it the next step. Suppose it is raining a lot, okay? And maybe we cultivate, maybe we don't. But why is that the worker's responsibility to determine? And if it's the owner's responsibility to determine, how does he get the word out to these people who live all over God's creation?
Yeah, that's what we're talking about here. Yeah. How does he know? He's not going to send him a text or something.
I don't have the answers. I'm just devil's advocate here.
No, we're with you.
When I read this, it says by contrast, the Barisis ruling concerns a case where the employer, in parentheses, and the workers did not inspect the land. So it sounded to me like maybe they inspected it together.
That would make sense.
And then it says, since the workers did not then the next, so then it says, since the workers did not themselves see the land, the employer had the responsibility to inform them that it might be unsuitable for cultivation. So it looks
Go
like
back-
the burden's on the employer.
We're back to
I have a problem.
inform.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's it.
It just shows you how primitive was, right?
Yeah,
No,
We also don't know if the employer had the ability to cover his fields, to protect it from getting too wet by the rain.
I doubt
I
it,
don't-
right? In those days,
that's not gonna happen.
yeah.
Sharon, you are a farmer?
My dad was a farmer.
You're gonna cover acres of land with
I
a tarp?
guess so. I'm thinking ahead.
It's not a baseball field.
I was just gonna say that. It's not a.
It wasn't a field of dreams, right, Sharon?
Shows you where my head is at. You know, we're talking about this whole thing and I'm thinking, wow, I just made reservations at a Hilton and now I can't go. Are they going to charge me still to stay overnight since I can't go? You know, it's bringing it up to today's terms.
Yeah.
What happened thousands of years ago? I guess I'm always thinking.
Unfortunately, the answer to your Hilton story is why we take out travel insurance, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
a lot of
Because,
them will have a time period if you do it 48 hours in advance.
Yeah. I wasn't thinking of all the legalities of it. I was just thinking of just the theoretical, wow, we're still doing that today kind of
Yeah.
thing. You know, what was said in the Talmud, we're still practicing that today. You know, these little light bulbs go off in my head, like.
It just makes me chuckle a little in the covering the field. Look what it takes to cover a baseball field.
I
Can you
know.
just imagine? And I say this not offensively, Sharon.
No, I get it.
Chuckling.
I get it.
Yeah, acres to cover. Can you imagine what that would take?
Never mind crushing the plants.
Yeah,
Well, if you're cultivating the field, you don't have to worry about the
Right,
plants.
right.
There aren't any yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right,
Anyway,
what the heck?
these are all interesting stories. I mean, this is interesting to talk about because we're trying to put ourselves in their shoes.
Yeah.
I'm sure that I'm not sure where they're coming from because how do you blame either one? You know, the farmer or the employer or the employee? I mean, how's he supposed to inform them if he realizes, you know, in the middle of the night that it's just going to be too soggy? Not to mention the fact that they didn't have Channel 8 to refer to.
Yeah,
They had to actually open the window to figure out what the weather.
they had local broadcasting out their shacks.
well, if you go back to although this sounds like the employees are going to go right to the field. If you go back a couple of pages, it said if they can tell them in the morning early enough, they might be able to find other work.
Yeah,
So
Not cultivating fields, though.
yeah,
Yeah,
if they're cultivating fields, they're all gonna be soggy.
yeah,
What would be
Okay.
really nice is if the employer found something else for that person to do. If it's not
I-
cultivating the fields, maybe he could shut the stalls or something. I don't know.
Well, that would be nice. That would be a good employer who's.
Yeah, just
would
find
then
something
have-
else for them to do.
And the
Yeah, but if-
workers would then appreciate this immensely.
but business wise, it might not be a good decision. I mean, this is a business, right? So if you give them something else to do, which is maybe busy work, and your field doesn't get cultivated, you've paid them and you still have an uncultivated field.
But
So
you
for
got
a business-
huge stalls.
And I bet as much as they didn't have telephones and stuff, they were business savvy.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I think so, yeah. Well, not as much as now, but I don't think.
I
Well,
think they
the
just didn't have the tools now.
circumstances.
They didn't have the tools. But for
Well,
their time.
education and stuff, yeah. It was a family business. Yeah.
That was 27, Rabbi.
Yep. Okay, continuing along. Ha delo saira la are me urta. By contrast, the prices ruling the employer must pay them as inactive workers concerns a case where the employer and the workers didn't inspect the land on the previous evening. Since workers didn't themselves see the land, the employer had the responsibility to inform them it might be unsuitable for cultivation. Last note on the page, which is 28.
The employer has his responsibility since he presumably is aware of the nature of his particular field, whereas the workers are not. If they did not inspect the field, the employer would be released from liability only if he stipulated previously with the workers that if they found the field too damp to cultivate, he was not prepared to pay them anything for their wasted time. So it sounds like that disclaimer has to go on every verbal contract with
Yeah.
every contracted worker.
Right.
Which makes a certain amount of sense.
It does. It takes away half my concerns.
I would think, especially if you're a day worker. You know, if this was someone you employed on a regular basis, maybe that's different, but a day worker is catch as catch can, really, for work.
Yeah. Okay, that
28.
was 28.
28.
The Gemara presents a related ruling, Ki ha de Amarava. It's comparable to that which Rava said, which is Haiman Dagar Agire Le Rivka. If one hired workers to dig ditches in the field, Viata Mitro Malya Maya. Sound like Aggadah. And then the rain came and filled the field with water, making the land unsuitable for digging. The law is as follows. E Saria la are me urta. The employer and the workers inspected the land on the previous evening. Then what? Sida they're falling. The fact that it rained and the workers lost and they're not paid anything. Lo sire la are me urta. But if he and the workers had not inspected the land the previous evening, Sida the Vaal Habayit. That's Baal Habayit again is the employer here. Then the fact that it rained is the employer's loss. The Yahiv Lahu Kufo Batal must pay each worker as one would pay an idle worker. Number one. So long note. Who's taking over the long one?
If the worker inspected the land with the employer, that means that the worker drove to the employer's house to inspect the land. So that means the employer and the worker are both there. So does the worker go back home, say, yeah, the land is good, and goes back home and then goes back to the employer again the next day?
We may
Yeah.
find out here in the note. Let's read the note.
Okay.
Scott, you want to read?
Yeah, Scott, you're up for the note. You're the last one in the note today. Okay.
As a general rule, the only time the employer is liable to compensate the workers for lost time is when he had reason to suspect that a given occurrence would make work unnecessary or impossible, and the workers had no reason to suspect this. In such a case, the employer had a responsibility to share his knowledge of the situation with the workers, and if he did not do this, he must pay them for the damages they suffered by this information being withheld from them. If, however, both employer and worker had the same grasp of the situation, both were either aware or unaware that a given occurrence would make a work stoppage necessary, then the employer bears no special responsibility towards the workers, and the workers have no claim against him for their lost time. Here, then, if the workers did not see the field on the day before, they can tell the employer, We could not have known that the field was susceptible to flooding on account of an evening rain. You, the employer, probably knew this information, and by not informing us of it, you have caused us to lose a day's work. If, however, they did see the field on the day before, the employer is not liable for the worker's lost time. He may tell them that it is their own misfortune that it rained. When the workers had not previously seen the field, Roche suggests another reason why the employer is liable to pay them. The workers can, in effect, tell them, "You told us that we were being hired to dig ditches. You did not mention that we were to dig in any specific field. If this field is flooded, then either give us work in a different field or pay us as idle workers."
Okay, that's a nice summary of what we've been discussing all night.
Yep. This might be a good place to end.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was just thinking that. All right, 77
Happy
A1.
Passover. I can't believe tomorrow's Seder. Anyway,
Yeah.
happy Passover, everyone. I'll see you guys, some of you Wednesday, tomorrow at 7:30 for the breakfast after the service. So be nice. So
Rabbi, I will not be here next Tuesday night because I'm going to a community Seder.
oh, next Tuesday? You won't? Okay.
How
And
do you
then
do-
when are you away?
Oh, I'm not going away till the 17th. That's a week from that's almost 2 weeks away. So
And you'll be away for 2 Tuesdays?
yeah, I'm coming back the 27th at night. So yeah.
We'll still have class.
Yes.
Oh, we
You'll
still
have
have class.
Yeah,
Oh, good. Are
Scott's
you
got
running
plans.
it?
Huh?
Are you having the class?
Yeah, we'll still have a class.
Okay, okay.
How do we do for the model Seder, by the way? How many people did we have?
Fun.
About 15, right? Weren't there about 15
It was a
people
good
there?
number of people. No,
Yeah,
but
it's about
Very nice number.
God
We
knows.
filled-
about
What was it,
20 or so,
17?
including kids.
I think there was 20. I can't.
Yeah,
Okay.
because we filled up 3 tables.
Okay,
Yeah.
good, good.
Yeah, it was
All
good.
right. See you next week, troops.
okay.
Have a
Bye.
good one.
Doug,
Night,
everyone.
everyone.
Take
Good
care.
Are we doing
Good morning.
Kabbalah?
Yes, 8 o'clock. See you
Okay.
guys.
Back in a few.
Hello. Okay, who's on here? Sharon, good, welcome.
Do you know that you're blurry tonight?
I know I have a problem. I gotta get a different phone. There's something wrong with my camera.
Ah,
Yeah, it's not good. The video doesn't work, and I have to get a replacement iPhone. Either that or a new one.
what kind is it?
The 13. There's a problem with the camera, so
Really?
I can't take videos with it. Yep, I got to go in the next couple of days before I go to Israel and get this going, because it won't let me even take a picture of my license to get the new phone. I have to go down to AT&T and they have to try to do it for me. So
Ah,
okay, everyone. So it's Passover tomorrow night. I'm wearing, so hot out today. I'm actually wearing a t-shirt. It's so freaking hot in my house. I didn't think that was going to happen in April, but it's happened. I only have 5 more minutes of cleaning today. I got all my songs together here in the house. I got like 300 songs I have sheet music for. The stuff I printed out. So, different bands I'm in, there's different songs. So I have a whole book of stuff just to learn for concerts. But anyway, I think it's good. I think music. Anyway, anyone who wants to learn guitar to be in our band here, like the band I'm in with guitars, I'll give free lessons. Anyone who wants to. Anyone who wants it. Scott, I know you're working with the kids. So anyone who wants to learn, I'll teach you guys if you want. Okay. So I Pesach's coming up, and I was listening to something by my friend Jonathan Rieti, my roommate in Israel, back in 1977. Anyway, he was saying that paro, it comes from like two words, like peh, ra, peh, mouth, ra, speaks bad. So paro, we can learn from paro from Passover that we shouldn't have a mouth that speaks bad. It's so easy every day. It's so easy for people to talk negative about people, right? Don't you hear it all the time? I know people don't mean to, but I think gossip. What did my sister say once she said this on eve of Yom Kippur. Said all these sins in the Machzor that we say we're guilty of. He says everything but I think I'm not guilty of a lot of them because they're not applicable to today. But one that she said she is guilty of is gossip.
Little girl getting her molars.
Mm,
What?
So we have a little girl getting her molars.
Okay.
mm.
Well, I remember my kids. Yeah, it's not easy. So it's not easy parenting, right? When the kids are younger, things happen. They cry a lot, I stayed up a lot of nights, but it's worth it in the end, right? The investment that we have in our children. And some of you have no children, but you have pets. So I was speaking to a girl yesterday, a little Indian girl in the pool, 10 years old. She said, I'm an only child. And her father pointed out, but you have a Labradoodle. I said, a Labradoodle? Doesn't that Labradoodle count for something? Yeah. I think that the Lab was the most popular dog, I think, for the last 5 years. And guess what it is now? Boston Terrier. Boston Terrier. Do you know many Boston Terriers? I don't know. I don't see many around, but
Not anymore.
well,
Most
for some
are.
reason, people love Boston Terriers. I don't know. I don't have any. Only animals I have are stuffed in my daughter's room. So, that's one thing about Passover I wanted to share. The other thing is Mitzrayim comes from Metzar Yam. Metzar Yam is like sort of you have borders and restrictions on the Yam, the water. The water created restrictions for us, and all the restrictions. I think the lesson from Egypt that we learn is when we have all these restrictions, we have to find a way to rise above these restrictions in life that we have. We have all these type of self-imposed regulations on ourselves, and sometimes we have to go beyond where we think it's safe in order to advance in life, right? Does anyone have a case of that? Sometimes you have to get outside your comfort zone. Scott, have you done that when you've been studying for conversion, all this?
Oh yeah, yeah. You have to shine the light in all the dark corners.
Yeah, especially when Chametz tonight, right?
Rabbi, it's very parallel to what we were discussing in the first class. Why do bad things happen to good people?
Yeah.
So if something bad happens, we have to figure out ways to overcome it. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can't, but sometimes you can't overcome things in your daily life. But I think it's very parallel.
And how many times have we all had something that we wanted to say to someone that was really, really hard? I mean, even if a corporation or a business has done you wrong, how many times have you picked up the phone to call them and to say, oh, I'm going to say this, 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 and this. And then you get on the phone and it's like, well, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, if that's what you're telling me, it is. Sometimes it's really hard to get outside your comfort zone.
Yeah, but how can we do it this year? How do we reach out sometimes to people and say, hey, even though you may not be practicing Jew for a long time, why don't you become part of our club? Why don't you become of our synagogue family? You don't have to have. There's no requirements that you have to. Someone told me I haven't practiced in 25 years. I said, so I'm not holding you back for that reason. Don't you can still join the synagogue. I don't care. I just got a note from that person in the mail, and a beautiful note. And maybe they will go outside the comfort zone and join us. So I'll have to reach out to them again this week. But you know what people feel, just because I didn't have a connection. I don't think it's too late, guys.
Excuse me.
I don't think it's too late for people to get a connection to the synagogue. I don't care if you haven't done anything in 20. Do you guys agree with me? I don't care if you didn't do anything in 20 years, right? Never too late, especially when you're only 42 years old, this person is.
Well, I think very much like Scott, you just have to want to do it. I don't think it's something that
Yeah.
you force somebody to do.
Oh no, they want to do it on some level. I think they do want to do it. They did mention it to me. So since it was mentioned, yeah. Now I got to pursue it with them. And their father also wants to possibly join. So
Sometimes they need the encouragement. It's in their mind. They've been away for a lot of years. They might find it hard to come back. So sometimes you need a friend or some encouragement to get you to do what you'd really like to do.
yeah, well, one of them's into married. I'd say that's not a problem. And the other one's father converted to Judaism, but he never did anything since the wedding in 30 years. But well, more like 45 years. But anyway, I don't think that should stop anyone. I think the fact is when we reach out to these people in the last 2 weeks, got such a beautiful note today in my office that obviously they get. What I think when you're nice to people, whether it's a funeral, a shiva, I think when we as a community reach out to people, then they feel, hey, why shouldn't I want to be part of this? They're so nice to me, right? Why does it have to take something like that, right, guys? It doesn't take something like that when you responding to someone when they're mourning that you have to then it has to wait to that point in time till they say, hey, well, maybe we do need a synagogue.
Kind of like what happened to me when I was talking about, how much I changed when I had this.
All right, after the near-death experience.
Sometimes a funeral will just spark someone. I had some people walk up to me at Marty's funeral and say that
Oh,
they
yeah,
joined the synagogue.
yeah.
Sometimes things like funerals bring out stuff in us that we don't think about on a daily basis, but all of a sudden we go to a funeral and think, wow, life is really precious. What do I want to do with it? And then all of a sudden they start thinking, I'd really love to just belong to a community. And since I'm Jewish, then maybe the synagogue is that community that I want to belong to. But it really comes from within.
I think it's more than one person having to do it. I think we have to have other people reach out to the person. What do you think? I think me is one reaching out, but I think you have to have other people reach out. What do you think, Scott? I think you have to have more than one person reach out to them and say, hey, we have a men's club, right, Scott? We have a men's club, guy. You don't
invite them on in. They can become part of the conversation.
minutes a day away. So I'm saying you could make it to the.
How many people did you have? How many men did you have come to your meeting?
Have between 8 and 10 right now.
It's a great number. That's a great number. We had 8 people at our last study session, and I thought 8 is like a magic number.
It's infinity, yes. And Passover is all about infinite possibility.
Yeah.
So I want to tell you, next week the class is going to be about something that blew my mind. I remember it was a Breslov friend of mine. Anyway, Hasidic guy. Anyway, someone said to this guy, they said, wow, this message should be sent. It's about prayer. It's about ascending through prayer. So this one person commented at the lecture, they said, boy, if every Jew only knew this, then everyone would be blown away with prayer. So I'm gonna bring it up next week about the power of prayer. Today I'm going to talk about the power of words, but next week it's going to be about the power of prayer and how prayer really. And then you guys will realize everyone that's not praying with us is how they're missing out. Everyone in this community that has nothing to do with prayer, they're really missing out. So my favorite word growing up was in magic. We had always magicians for shows like Aaron Sherman. Abracadabra. If a person makes a vow from Book of Numbers, according to whatever comes from their mouth, shall he do. So we talk about vows, right? New Year's resolutions, all this stuff, right? So vows are considered to be proclamations. Whenever we want to do something, we make a vow. Oh, but if you do make a vow a certain way, keep it, you'll be in trouble though. If you're asked to take out the garbage and the person responds, okay, I'll take it out right away. What does right away mean? I know this happened when I was growing up. Right away means now, not later, when you feel like it. Right away means right away. Once you say, like we all had the chances when we were younger, all 3 of us, it comes from your mouth. You're obligated to do exactly what you said. So we know we do it on an everyday basis, right? I am going to eat healthy today. What happens? Oh, maybe tomorrow. I'll eat healthy maybe the day after. If you're saying you're doing it, then do it today. So we have a simple solution for this word problem we have. Whenever we say anything, whether it be something major like, I'm going to be stuck in Marty Morgenstein's name today, right? Sharon, you know him. Or something small like even taking out the garbage right now. One should always say, what are those magic words? I grew up with these words. Everything, when you said something, you used these 2 words. Everyone should know these words now after today. Beli neder. Everyone said it growing up in Orthodox world. That means without a vow. I'm going to do it. Beli neder. Okay, without a vow. This way, we're proclaiming our intent that the words we are saying do not have the force of a vow. Just by adding those words, beli neder, it means you're not responsible for the vow. So in other words, we're committing to do something bli neder. It should also, in our everyday conversation, it should be part of our regular part of speech. So what's the fuss about words? Why then does the Torah hold us accountable for a vow every time we say something, no matter how haphazard it is? So the rabbis in ancient days began discussion on the topic with certain verses in Genesis that speak about creation. How did God create the universe? What vehicle did God use? What we all say it in the Baruch Shamar every day and on Shabbat, I tell you guys, right? God, how did God? God spoke and it came into creation, right? Baruch Shamar v'Hayahu Olam. The sound emanated from God. This is the Sefer Yetzirah. The sounds, those are the 22 letters of the alphabet. So through the literature in Kabbalah, which we're studying now, the importance of Hebrew letters is strongly emphasized. So if you guys don't know Hebrew letters, you should really make it your business to learn them. And I was studying with a guy in London a few months ago, and we used to have different combinations, like Abu Lafi is chanting, different combinations of letters have a certain way of affecting the world. And these are called mystical chants. And we want to achieve what Bernie used to like to be called dveikut, acquire a way of bonding with God. The holy Mekubalim of today, a lot of them are in Israel, they have possessed this ancient knowledge. They receive the sacred keys which sounds used to create the universe. So these guys know in Jerusalem. We are familiar with the miraculous powers of these people and how they perform miracles. Someone was telling me in the pool today that this Pope had 2 miracles. One kid was saved from cancer, and the other one, he said, the Eucharist, they were running out of wafers, and he said something. And did you hear about this in Thomaston? And then all of a sudden it doubled in front of
Yes.
him.
My
Did you hear about
boss
that?
told me, yeah.
I didn't know it. Someone told me in the pool. This person, I call her Mother Teresa. Her name's Teresa. She's got MS. She's got bad case of MS. And he said, "Well, how come he can't cure me from MS?" So, well, I guess there's certain limitations. The Baal Shem Tov, we all know he's the father of Hasidic thought. He could heal unhealable diseases. He went time traveling throughout the world and cured people. In our day, we have Rabbi Yitzchak Kaduri. My teacher, who I study with, was a student of Kaduri and Moshe Sharabi and the Baba Sali. These guys did miracles every day. So don't think that people can't do them today. So what's the technique that they use? When they perform acts above or outside the laws of nature, they focus their minds. They have a picture. I was taking a class the other day. How do things get done? You get a picture in your mind. So these guys are picturing an alternate reality. They channel the image of this reality into their speech. In other words, they either speak words of prayer, holy names. Either way, once the energy of sound is activated at the subatomic level, a new reality is created. This shouldn't come to a surprise to those familiar with nuclear physics. According to the latest theories of subatomic particles, the smallest particle are called what, Scott? Super strings. Remember that? You're familiar with that. Yeah, you're familiar with that name, super strings. Goes by other names too. So these make up subatomic particles in the form of little strings. What makes matter bond together to form different patterns is how these strings, that's why I love music, guys. It's all about, remember they say good vibrations, the Beach Boys? It's all about vibrations. In other words, the strings are like strings on, that's why I just offered you guys free guitar lessons, right? Or violin. They're vibrating like that. When they're plucked, music is made. Thus, when these super strings vibrate, sound is formed. So then what vibrates these super strings? I don't know if the physicists have discovered it, but a certain sage of old could tell them it's the power of, how do they vibrate? What's the power? Power of thought. Thought. So we see here a lesson in the Torah. This has been corroborated by science and mysticism. The sounds we make, the words that come out of our mouths, our words are never empty words. We never speak merely for the sake of making sounds. We speak to express what's in our minds. Now here arises a serious problem to conclude here today. If our thoughts are not pure and holy, then neither will be our words. So if you don't have pure thoughts, it's not going to come out well. We speak combining impure words and impure thoughts. What are we creating? God created a universe with his form of speech. Do we, with our form of speech, destroy the universe? Don't underestimate your own power of speech. I know a lot of people here are taking classes where this is taught. I do not have a challenge for you to remember the last time you said something to someone that either elevated them or put them down. Indeed, what can the speech do? I had this own situation, my own family last week. You don't even realize what you're doing when you use certain words. It can elevate you, it can also tear you down. It can create joy, create anger. What we say can start a war or avoid one. I'm doing this for a certain reason because of different things that happened this week in my life. Speech and words, whether in spoken or written form, are the most powerful weapons. The magical word abracadabra is a Hebrew word which means I create. Abra, what? Ka, I speak. Dabra, I create what I speak. In light of this mysticism, we understand why the words we speak have tremendous power. Therefore, when we say that we will do something, we are creating a reality. When we do not keep our words, we're in essence destroying a part of creation. In order to avoid this misuse of speech, we must unite proper thought to our speech. Thus, when we recite even the most simple of statements, we must say Beli Neder. In every circle of every observant Jew that I ever grew up with, the words Beli Neder are an integral part of your vocabulary. Every one of us should learn to adopt the concept of thought and pattern of speech. In addition, when we perform commandments, it's not enough that we just do them. Our thoughts must be involved. I know Bernie, in memory of him tonight, right? We always have to think about what we're doing. Baal Shem Tov, written in the Parsha that I'm talking about in Bamidbar, says that this is why the sages of old, Bekuvalim, and the sages of now have instituted the L'Shem Yichud prayers for mitzvot. They merge together different letters, names of God. By taking a moment and reciting a few words that focus our minds on the commandment, we elevate the mitzvah and turn it into a tool of spiritual creation. L'Shem Yichud prayers perform a vital spiritual task. Each of us should endeavor to recite the words L'Shem Yichud Kucha Brichu U Shechinate. For the sake of the unity of the Holy One, blessed be He and His Shekhinah prior to all of our actions. L'Shem Yichud. You should know that you're reuniting God with our actions. In this way, we have to be aware of it. We elevate all that we do and bond with God at every moment. This is the easiest and most direct way to fulfill the mitzvah, the commandment of dveikut, of clinging to God. Next week, we'll see how, I'm going to point out how the Chatzi Kaddish prayers are going to help pave your way to heaven. You never thought that the Hecha Kedusha is going to, well, the short Kaddish can pave your way to heaven. I'm going to hold that out for next week when we have it in the middle of the holiday of Passover, the holiday of transforming and, as I said before, jumping, right? Like in Passover, jumping over our limitations and trying to create a new reality for ourselves. Any questions or thoughts on today's subject? A little heavy tonight, but I had a situation this week about when people didn't use the power words correctly, and then I was thinking about what to tell you guys, and I got to tell you that we really have to think. A lot of us, I know I'm guilty, a lot of us just say what we're saying, right? We don't even think about it, right? We think not. We say it, then you can't take it back, right? Once you say it, I didn't mean. Dan Scott, what do you have to say about that? I know you guys are pretty careful. I don't think you've ever said anything that's been hurtful to me in the time that I know you.
Well, that's
hope not.
good. All right. I think about it though with my children all the time.
Oh, Trudy, hi, yeah.
When I lose my temper with my children, and what have I said that their little ears hear and they may not fully understand, and then, you know, do they think that they're bad and they're not really good? Did I really explain what went wrong and it was their actions versus them and things like that? It's hard. That part is hard. They're the people I have the most interaction with, so they're usually the people that I have to bounce things off of. So, but yeah, the power of your words is huge, and when you have little kids, you see that like tenfold because they'll repeat it back to you, and you're like, I said that. So
Well, not just repeat it back to you, but they will believe it because
Yeah.
it came out of your mouth.
right.
Or they'll repeat it at a time later on in a to someone
Yeah.
else, or to, you know, because they've learned it.
Yeah, I've seen them use the like say it to their brother or sister, you know, when they see them doing something that they think is the exact same scenario, but it's not. And you're like, oh no, I didn't explain that well at all. So,
And when they don't behave, William doesn't behave, you say, I'm taking the guitar away for 6 months, but you have to say Beli Neder, right? So you don't want to make it a vow that you're responsible for, right? So if you had William, I'm gonna take that darn thing away from 6 months. Oh, Beli Neder. I didn't mean, you know, it could be it's not a vow anymore. It's just threatening.
yeah.
Charger.
I
Any,
Pretty good job of following through right away.
Yeah,
so.
he probably does a much better job of following through. I've changed in where sometimes I'll ask if he wants me to take something away instead of making the vow.
but you know what? I don't think many people believe this. Charger's over there. Charger and Arlene. Do you believe that thoughts become reality? Arlene, if you think about a hole-in-one in golf on the island hole, are you gonna get it?
Well, I've been thinking that for a lot of years, but I do think you are what you think to an extent.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you think you're going to get a hole in one on an island, which I happen to think is very doable, not that I've gotten one yet, then I think there's an opportunity. But I think if you stand up there and say, "No, here it goes into the water again," I would say it's going to go into the water again. So you are what you think, and if you think negative, let me put it in a more positive way. If you think optimistically, you've got chances to do what you think you want to do. If you're negative, I think it's harder to get your confidence up to be able to do it.
Well, Arlene, why are so many people negative in life? Why do you hear people? I heard so many people over the years say, "It's going in the water, it's going in the water." And you know what? Water. Most of the time when someone says that, and when people say it's going on the island, it's actually going to make it. They usually do. If you keep saying it's going in the water all the time, it ends up 90% of the time it goes in the water.
I don't know why, Rabbi. But
What?
one of the things I've sometimes thought about is I bet if you ask someone how their vacation was,
Yeah.
the response you might get a lot of the time is, "Oh, it was just a great vacation. Of course, there was that one day it rained." So like, you need to put something bad in, you know,
One day.
and you do it without even thinking about it, you know. I had a great time, but rain one day, or I couldn't.
Oh, Arlene, man, you hit it right on the head. I do that all the time. I talk about, oh, my vacation was so fabulous until I came to New Orleans.
Oh, yeah.
And
What you
I
say?
have to be very careful about that. And I've tried to be careful about it because I've heard it so much. And it just, and I don't know, why do we do it? What's the human nature in that we're, yeah, we had a great time, but, you know.
We were gone 7 weeks and it was only 24 hours of time that was bad. Why do I even mention it?
That's a good point, Sharon. That's something you have to work
Why
on.
do I even mention it? My vacation was wonderful, except that you're right, Arlene. I don't know why I do that. I mean, our vacation from California was wonderful, until the vulture smashed into our windshield.
For windshield.
I think, I don't know.
Hey Trudy, welcome.
Hi. I think that sometimes we put in the negative because we don't want other people to feel like the experience was so wonderful and you didn't have it, only I did.
Ooh,
Evil, it's like wishing an evil thing on people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Trudy,
that's-
that's good.
Yeah, you don't want to make it sound like it was so wonderful that other people didn't have the opportunity, where you couldn't share it with them.
Right. That's a great point, because a lot of people feel they can get the evil eye. I know many people, if I ask them how life is, they say, okay, I'm making a living. Guy's making $6 million a year. How you doing? Bye, making a living. That's what I grew up with that. There are people, multi-billionaires even. How you doing? Making a living.
Yeah.
And my friends that are very wealthy, I ask them how they're doing. Making a living. They're doing the same thing their parents do.
It's almost like you're afraid to say that you're doing really well because you're afraid you're going to jinx yourself and you're going to sabotage yourself and you're going to make your life not as good because your life is so wonderful and you don't want other people to think that you don't have solace in your life. But I was groomed for this. My parents were always negative about their friends, about places they went to and stuff. So I was groomed from a very young age to say, well, life's okay.
I have to say, I don't think that way. I try not to, I think I've said it to every one of you. I have a really good life. I'm very happy. I have a good life. I don't try to make a big deal out of it, if you know what I mean.
Mhm.
But the fact is, I look around and I know I've got a really good life. I'm very happy. I work hard. I live well, good enough for me,
Well, I like that attitude that you have, Arlie. You never say, "Oh, I'm to the sky, to the moon every day." I don't think people want to hear that. I think it just creates jealousy.
But I think if you, I don't think you want to do it to the point where you make people feel like they're not as good as you or not as lucky as you. But if you're leading a good life, why not say it?
Well, yes.
In the appropriate, time and venue.
Well, I got to be careful because a lot of people I swim with in health tracks, a lot of people big elements. And if I say that life is so great, stuff like that, these people are struggling just to walk. It may not be taken so well. So I have to watch myself even there when I'm talking to people that are handicapped every day.
Right. But if someone says to you, Rabbi,
Yeah.
I got, how are you? And you're fine.
Yeah. Well,
you should say you're fine. And and I think, I don't even know how to say this. It's not taking away from someone who doesn't have as much or isn't as healthy, because I think I would like to think most of those people are glad you're fine. They might wish they were healthier, but
what
they're
if
glad you're fine.
Day of my life, how would you take it then? If you had, say you had MS, like a lot of these people
Right.
have the limbs and feel, if I'm saying, oh, this is the greatest day of my life. I'm kicking and swimming and doing everything I want. How would you feel in there with MS?
I think there's a time and a place, but you don't always know, right? You might not know someone has MS. I have a friend who has MS who is,
I know everyone
symptom free, but I don't know. I don't want to hurt anybody else. I don't want anybody else to feel bad. But if I can, I want to feel good.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, there's the flip side to that conversation too.
Gotcha.
So there's two parts of it, right? So you're not really responsible for the way the other person takes it. You can be conscious of it, you can have your own kavanah about it, right? You can mean the best, right, when you say something, but if you don't know, you don't know, and somebody else takes offense to it, to be quite honest, that's their problem.
Right.
If you're doing your best to be a good human being, good moral human being, and they take offense to it, well, that's their problem. But
I agree.
on the other hand, right, if you're doing really well in your life, but the only thing you ever tell the people around you is life's hard, and I'm just going to tell you what you want to hear so that we can commiserate together. They're never going to be inspired to do better than they're doing.
Yeah.
Well said. Well said, Scott.
Well, Scott, how would you answer the person today? Say, I call her Mother Teresa. She's such a sweet soul. Teresa, how would you answer her when she said to me about the miracle today, about the Eucharist, and how this priest, I forgot his name, McFarland, anyway, how he cured this kid from cancer, but yet she said to me, well, how come he can't cure me?
Yeah.
I don't know that you can answer
It's
that.
not my plan.
Yeah.
That's what I figured out in my life. I go through the things that I have and continue to go through because that's the plan for me.
Right.
And I wouldn't choose to, but if I haven't and I don't, then it doesn't make me into a more developed person.
Okay.
But I think you could also say, what a wonderful thing that is, and don't lose hope and don't lose faith.
That's exactly what I told Teresa today, actually, earlier. Yeah, that's what I told her, actually, because she studies, every week in a study group like we study. She studies Jesus' teachings, whatever. But I told her, don't lose faith, Teresa. I'm sure there's a plan. So, but anyway, does everyone agree with the fact? Sharon, do you agree with that statement that if someone says to me, and I have two people today I was swimming that had MS and they could hardly walk without a crutches or cane, or what if I said that I'm having a splendid day? I love every day. God has given me such beautiful, days, and I'm taking full advantage. How would you feel, Sharon, if you're sitting there with MS and you could hardly walk?
First of all, I don't think you would say that in that setting.
I would. I'm just saying, if I did.
I know you're putting it out there, but I just think that a human being, knowing that two other human beings are not in as great shape and can hardly walk, that a human being that would come out with that kind of a comment, I don't think that human being thinks very much of themselves or about other people if they're going to come out with that comment.
But
I think the Kabbalah is in the details, right? So I can directly relate to the example because my mother had an extremely bad case of MS.
Okay.
She was in and out of a wheelchair for most of her life, and at the end there, she was always in a wheelchair, and she still managed to have the ability to get herself in and out of the chair until she fell on the side of the bathtub and damaged a kidney, and then she was bedridden for a year. But from growing up with her, when somebody told her that they were having a good day, she was happy for them. She was happy for them that they were having a good day, and she was glad to hear about it because she could live vicariously through them.
Right.
As long as it was somebody saying it with a good intention. And she read people really well. It was really easy for her to tell if somebody had good intention or not. And for the folks that didn't sound off properly, that didn't have the right intention, and you could tell it in their body language and you could tell it in the tone of their voice, she just didn't talk to those people. She said, okay, I go my way, you go yours. And instead would converse with those people that she liked to converse with.
Yeah,
So there's many facets to that example.
I think you just have to choose your words.
Mhm.
I don't think you
Probably-
should
probably not-
deny that you're
I-
having a good day. But I don't think you have to elaborate to the extent where you could hurt someone's feelings. And sometimes I think sort of to your point, Scott, you say to someone who's maybe bedridden, and they say, "How you doing?" "Oh, I'm great. I'm doing good. Nice day. It's warm outside." It's it might be a good thing for them, might be a motivator for them. But I don't think you can deny yourself feeling well. You need to have compassion and help that person who maybe is not in your place. But I don't think you can deny yourself of feeling good.
Well, and I can give you another negative aspect of feeling like you always have to commiserate with others, right? If everybody's always miserable all the time and you're that one person who really just needs positivity around you and you can't find it, then what's the point?
Right.
Yeah, well, that's,
That's how suicides come around.
Right.
Because those folks surround themselves and steep themselves in all of that negativity and hopelessness, and then they just decide what's the point anymore.
And there's a lot going on, Scott, so it is worrisome.
So you got to be able to convey positivity and do it with the right covenant.
I know a lot about Christians and they do have this school of thought, school of positivity. You ask them how they're doing, said, "Oh, I'm doing great. God is good to me every day." I know one person that says that every time. And she's dealing with a lot of, she's like 87 years old and she's in an exercise class I used to take. I used to tell that to all these people that's what she believed in.
Mhm. Yeah, it's one of my it was the most simple thing. The old timers in California, all the folks who grew up there when it was nothing but dirt roads in Southern California and stuff like that. You ask them how they're doing, and they'd say, "Well, I'm on this side of the dirt, so every day's a blessing."
I hear that from some guy every single day. I'm on this other side of the dirt.
I cannot stand that expression.
Well,
How you doing?
it
I'm
was
on the other
always
side of the dirt.
almost always followed by every day is a blessing. I'm on this side of the dirt, so every day is a blessing.
Right. But on this side of the dirt is so minimalizing yourself in a way, I think I read somewhere, maybe I think I read somewhere that when you are disabled, like you have MS and you're really showing the signs and it's hard to get around or whatever, that you go through a lot of the same processes a person who is that you grieve, just like you would grieve for someone who passes away. So you get angry.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can remember the 4 stages, but you get angry, like, why me? And then eventually you go through the stages and you come to a place where you can be happy. So, and I've seen that a lot, and I hope that's the way most people are.
Yeah. Good point. Anyway, guys, I got to run. Got a lot to do.
Also,
Nice to have this little for Passover about Pesach, the mouth that speaks, Hera, Paro, the mouth that speaks bad. So the lessons for today is you got to watch what we say to people. You got to be really careful because I can't tell you how many times in life I've said something that gets totally misconstrued. You have to know who you're talking to and and how they're going to receive the message. Isn't it true, guys, that a lot of times you mean something good and someone takes it the wrong way? Because you
do have to know your audience.
right. I'm gonna get a Chag Sameach Passover.
Yeah.
Pesach, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Maya.